The U.S. District Court in Boston has just finished up a hearing over the extent of the relationship between the FBI and Whitey Bulger, Boston's notorious and elusive organized crime figure who was himself an FBI informant. Former FBI agent John Connolly was Whitey Bulger's handler, and Connolly is now accused of allowing Bulger and his associate, Steve Flemmi, to commit crimes, possibly even murder, in order to get information from them about the Italian mafia. Tonight, former FBI agent Connolly speaks out. But first, a little history on this complex case. In the 1950s, Whitey Bulger was arrested for numerous armed robberies and served time in Alcatraz. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Bulger rose from a soldier in the Winter Hill Gang to one of the most powerful organized crime leaders in the Boston area. Described by associates on the streets of South Boston as a murderer and a drug kingpin, Bulger, it seemed, was untouchable. Then in 1988, the Boston Globe broke a story that made it all come clear. Whitey Bulger and his associate, Stevie the Rifleman Flemmi, were high-ranking informants for the FBI. At first, the FBI denied it, but the 20-year relationship was impossible to cover up. For one thing, Bulger and Flemmi were instrumental in bringing down the Italian organized crime mob, including Rhode Island's Raymond Patriarca. At the heart of the matter is just what Bulger and Flemmi got in return. Boston College professor Robert Bloom says it's clear the FBI allowed the pair to continue their own criminal activities.
They turned their heads even though they knew he was involved in crimes. And by turning their heads, he thought, at least implicitly, they were sanctioning his criminal activity.
The FBI denies that Bulger and Flemmi were promised protection. But in 1995, after the relationship with the FBI had supposedly soured, indictments were handed down on Bulger and Flemmi. Coincidentally, Bulger skipped town and hasn't been heard from since. Former FBI agent John Connolly is here. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have a few notes because this is like a roadmap to me and it's hard for me to follow along. But I want to start by asking, when was the last time you had direct contact with Whitey Bulger?
I'd say I had contact with him a good year before he was indicted at the behest of the FBI.
So in 94 sometime?
That would be a good guess, about 94.
And do you have any idea where he is now?
No, I do not.
How hard would it be to find him, or how hard do you think it is to find him?
Well, apparently it's pretty hard to find him. He's not your average criminal. He's very bright. He's very disciplined. And I would think that he has the discipline to lay low. He doesn't.
Would it be your guess, your best guess, that he's still in the country or somewhere else?
I would have no idea.
Do you think anybody in the FBI knows at this point?
No, I don't believe they do. I think there's a good faith effort to catch him. My opinion.
Tell me what kinds of information Whitey Bulger and Stevie the Rifleman Flemmi were able to provide to you that was so valuable to the FBI that the FBI was willing to turn their heads on some of the crimes that they were doing? Well,
the FBI really didn't turn their heads. Flemmi filed an affidavit in which he said that he was allowed to do anything but murder.
Which meant gambling, drugs?
Well, no, anything but murder means
well, I'm
cars,
trying to be specific.
Yes, gambling, drugs, bank robberies. That was far too broad. That was not the agreement.
Are you saying that's untrue?
I don't agree with Flemmi's assertion that he had the right to do anything but murder. They had the right to conduct a gambling and a loan sharking business and collect rent from bookmakers with no violence. And that decision was made by Jeremiah T. O'Sullivan, the head of the strike force. It was, Larry Saha testified to that in court. That's the exact message that he was given.
What kinds of information were they able to bring to the FBI that was so valuable, as I said it before, that they were willing to allow them to continue a loan sharking operation? Like what did they bring in?
Well, these were two highly placed assets of the Bureau. And you have to remember why they became assets of the Bureau.
Which was that you wanted to bring down, well, essentially, the Italian
we
mafia.
wanted to bring down the Italian mafia. I mean, the mafia was the #1 investigative priority of the FBI. And and as such, Bulger and Flemmy were not on our investigative radar screens. They were, however, at a sufficiently high level in their own organization to be able to laterally affect the mafia.
Were they so well plugged into the Angiulo family, the Patriarca family, that they were able to get information on those people and bring it to the FBI that eventually led to their indictments?
Well, absolutely. They were long-term sources of the FBI, and they were that. It's important to recognize why they became sources of the FBI. They were targeted for elimination by the mafia.
By the Italian mafia?
By the Italian mafia, and in the late 70s, mid-70s. And
did they come to you?
No. It appeared that there was going to be a gang war and that they were going to initiate it. And I felt strongly that I could stave off a gang war should I reach out for these people and convince them not to go to war with the mafia, because the mafia at that time had no intention of taking it, as they say, to the street with these people. And I was able to convince them that they ought to do the same thing to the mafia that the mafia were doing to them, and that is use their friends in law enforcement to whittle them down, and who was ever left they would murder. They did it with the Joe Barboza gang.
Right.
And the mafia tipped their hand to these people. They had some intelligence from inside the mafia themselves. They were tipped off what Jerry Angiulo's and Larry Zanino's intentions were for them. And based on that, they then decided to play the same game. It was a high-stakes poker game is what it was.
Did anyone in the Italian mafia suspect that Bulger and Flemmy were informants for the FBI?
I don't believe so.
In 1988, which is only 10 years ago, seems like ancient history, the Boston Globe first reported that Bulger and Flemmy were FBI informants. And that has since been confirmed. It's now been reported that the head of the organized crime task force inside the FBI, John Morris, was one who tipped, that's been reported, I don't know for myself that that's true, I have to say that he was the one who leaked that to the Boston Globe. He did, he admitted it in court. Why would he do that? Why would he let that information out?
Well, it was an unconscionable act of treachery. There could be no other reason for leaking that to a news media, to Jerry O'Neill of the Globe, with whom he had a long relationship, by the way. I mean, he collaborated on a book with Jerry O'Neill. Jerry O'Neill and his partner Lear made money on John Morris.
Richard Lear from the Globe.
Yes. And in '88, it was to O'Neill that he gave Bulger's name as having a business relationship with the FBI.
And what was in it for John Morris at that point to out Whitey Bulger?
I believe the judge asked the right question. The judge asked him, "Did you believe that this could get him murdered?"
Him being
Jim Bulger murdered, and he said, "Yes, I thought it could." And he says, "And did you do it because of the money?" And he denied
so
it.
we'll back up, because it also came out in court that John Morris had accepted so-called loans.
A loan.
Yeah, a $7,000 loan, which I guess was never repaid.
It was a $5,000 loan.
And I thought it was $7,000. There was another $2,000 that came.
Well, he says that.
Well, all right. I can't nitpick the details here. A loan. He got a loan.
The details are important to me.
Okay. He got a loan that he didn't have to repay.
Yeah.
So here's the FBI getting a loan from the mafia.
Right. I mean, it was an act of corruption. He was I believe the guy was the most corrupt agent in the history of the FBI.
So now why does he have immunity in all of this?
That's a very good question.
And what is the answer?
The answer is, here's somebody that put bombs under people's cars, took money from gangsters, lied under oath, flunked polygraph exams, tipped them off to investigations, and the prosecutors gave him immunity.
And not
they
you.
denied it to me.
They're saying that you are a rogue FBI agent.
I have never heard anyone say that.
Characterized as that. Well, there was a quote out of the paper.
Well, yeah.
From an unnamed source.
It was
a favorite
quote,
thing to.
Yeah, it's an unnamed source. The fact of the matter is, I never committed a corrupt act.
Why? I don't understand why all these people have immunity anyway.
Stevie
Flemmy has immunity. John Morris has immunity.
I had an unblemished record in the FBI. I was commended by every director in the FBI's history from J. Edgar Hoover till the time I retired. I had an unblemished record. There's one reason why they don't want to give me immunity. They are afraid of the truth. The government is afraid of the truth. When Mr. Popio proffered to them what I was prepared to say.
And what was that?
That was that, for the most part, I agreed with their case. I had no trouble with the induction ceremony portion of that case. Those are all my sources. Mm-hmm. The Angiulo case had 9 sources, 5 of them are mine. The second in the trilogy of cases that brought the mob down was a Vanessa's case. There were 3 sources. All 3 were mine.
Okay, but we're confused about this. I mean, I understand the induction ceremony. There was an informant there, and the government, and the case now says if there was an informant at that induction ceremony, then they shouldn't have had the wiretap in there. I understand that, but what are you saying that they would be afraid of the truth? I don't follow that.
Well, they indicted these people for gambling and loan sharking, and they were allowed to do it. It was a policy devised by Jerry O'Sullivan from the Strike Force. It was communicated to them on several occasions by John Morris, and I communicated it to them. By the way, the important thing here is that I don't want immunity for any corrupt acts. I don't need it. I wouldn't take it.
I understand.
I only need it for the narrow issue of authorization.
You're saying that the government doesn't want to accept the fact that illegal activity was indeed condoned. That was the deal, and they're denying that.
Does anyone really believe that Mr. Bulger and Mr. Fleming would survive the FBI for 20 years unless we intended them?
I don't believe it right now. I think he's still
unless
being
we
intended
for them to survive.
Well, that's what most people believe right now, and it would be hard for you or anyone to convince us of otherwise.
Well, I don't know. Right now, I do not believe they're protecting him.
The other thing is that one of the great curiosities in all of this, and I know you're from South Boston, we want to know what the relationship was, if any, with Billy Bulger, how closely connected he was with his brother,
President
whether
Bulger.
he knew that his brother was an FBI informant. Did he know that?
The simple answer is he knew nothing about it, and his brother wanted it that way. That was at his decision when we first had the relationship, the business relationship.
You don't think he ever told him?
I don't think he ever told him.
Were you close to the former Senate president at the time?
I've always been a friend of his and remain so to this day.
And there was nothing that was ever said about the relationship?
Never.
You know,
those two worlds never intersected.
Can you understand why these kinds of tales make people cynical about our government, or why it feeds the paranoia, frankly, of the paramilitary in thinking that, you know, the government is all out to get us and that they're really the bad guys and they're the good guys?
Well, the government is not, the government, you can't paint the entire government with the brush of a few people.
Well, this is the FBI.
I agree, and like any other organization, they had their problems, but I mean, I thought we were men of principle. We make a deal with these people whose lives were placed in jeopardy by the FBI.
But can you understand why people wouldn't appreciate the fact that you were making a deal with them? They want you to bring them all down.
Well, but that's the business we were in. You have to understand. Like any other business, you're going to prioritize your resources. You're going to use the resources you had to accomplish what your mission is. Our mission was to take out the mafia. The mafia had organizational structure. They had rules. They had regulations. I mean, they took an oath to leave their mother's dying bedside and kill for the mafia.
If you were ever aware of a case where there was a murder committed by Whitey Bulger or Steve Fleming, wasn't it your obligation as a law enforcement? It would be my obligation. Were you ever aware of any?
No, I never. I mean, these guys were sources of mine. They're not going to sit down and tell me. From the very beginning, it's understood.
Did you ever ask them if they killed anybody?
Well, why would I do that? He was a source. I mean, the top echelon criminal informant program, the reason that a lot of these, they're having difficulty with this right now is it's in conflict with the Attorney General guidelines. It doesn't make any sense. And that's one thing that has emerged from these hearings. The top echelon criminal informant program was geared towards developing top echelon mobsters, primarily mafia members, who by definition have all killed at least once. The bottom line is our mission was to take out a mafia family, and we accomplished it. We took out 42 members and associate members, all of whom I I would guess, have killed at least 5 people, directly or indirectly. So you're talking about people who have killed maybe 200 people, and we took them out, using a gang of 2. If Bulger and Flemmy were hit by lightning, there was no Winter Hill gang.
All right. It's a complex case. I could go on more. I'm sorry that we didn't have a little bit more time. I thought we should have taken a little bit. John Connolly, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.